Hello, here is my engagement table. My standards and activities are for the 8th grade English Language Arts classroom. My first standard is support claims with logical reasoning and relevant evidence using accurate, credible sources and demonstrating an understanding of the topic or text. Students will be learning how to gather accurate and credible research using this standard. Students will be researching to support the argument should the driving age be raised to 16. They'll use a graphic organizer to process the information that they do find. The organizer will have two columns. One column will be where they list their arguments, while the second column will list the evidence that they're using to support the argument. This is an excellent way just to really organize the research that they find. It also helps them be able to Hello, this is my engagement table. All of the standards and activities are for the 8th grade English Language Arts classroom. The first standard that I used is support claims with logical reasoning and relevant evidence using accurate, credible sources and demonstrating an understanding of the topic or text. Students will be learning how to gather accurate and credible research. Students will research for articles that will support the argument should the driving age be raised to 16. They'll use a graphic organizer to organize the information that they find. The left-hand column will be the argument or claim that they want to make, and the right-hand column will be the evidence or research that they find to back up that argument. This is a really easy method for students to organize their research once they find it. Because this is a heavily reading and writing focused activity, I want to make sure that our aid is available in the classroom to work with our IEP students as they research relevant evidence and record it in their organizer. Oftentimes the aid will stay in the room with the students, but when it's a heavily written and writing and reading based activity, the students are often taken down to a resource room where it's a little quieter and they can work more individually with the aid. I'll know that students have learned how to gather accurate and credible research because they're going to use this organizer to debate in front of the class, including excellent uses of the relevant facts and examples from their credible sources. Using a graphic organizer really allows students to better link information and use it to build a larger, more detailed, argumentative piece in this case. However, Marzano says that graphic organizers are popular for students just to represent any knowledge that they encounter and use it later on, whether it's in a whole class discussion or a project that they will be completing. The second standard that I chose is use technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing and present the relationships between information and ideas efficiently, as well as to interact and collaborate with others. Students will be learning how to publish writing via the online medium within a whole class. So students will be working together to produce several pieces of writing that they can put in an online newsletter that we can then distribute to the school and parents and even community if we wanted. Students will work in small teams and eventually in a large group that incorporates various levels of learning. There'll be options for students to complete not only writing projects to publish via the internet, but photography series and perhaps hand-drawn cartoons that display that linkage between information and ideas. This option between writing, photography, hand-drawn elements allows for our students with different learning levels to still engage and be creative in the learning process. I will know that students have been able to publish writing via the online medium and work together as a class because they're going to have a finished e-newsletter that's well written and engaging. This really focuses on cooperative learning. Cooperative learning really allows students to work as a team. Marzano says that group work allows students to view information ideas from multiple perspectives, and anytime that students are learning from each other, they're growing their knowledge base every time that they're working, whether it's a small group with partners or whole group discussion. The third standard I used was determine a central idea of a text and analyze its development over the course of the text, including its relationship to supporting ideas. provided an objective summary of the text. Students are learning summarization. I would have students read the informational article, "Is 16 too young to drive?" and write a summary using the Tamavoops structure. Students can listen to the story orally or read along with a book to aid them in their various learning methods. The Tamavoops strategy suggests that students write out a title, main idea, all ideas or the supporting ideas. They look up vocabulary words that they may not know, and then they paraphrase and write it in their own words, and they organize the summarization in a way that makes sense. And then they end it with the purpose or the summary, the overall conclusion of what the article is about. In order to meet the IEP students' needs, instead of writing out a summary, students could use a graphic organizer that follows this Tamavoops strategy to help them better organize main ideas, supporting details, and conclusions, for example. Students will turn in a written or typed summary or the completed graphic organizer that follows the summarization guideline Tamavoop that we reviewed in class. Students are better able to focus on a piece of text when they have a purpose for reading, and Marzano also suggests that students learn when they're able to translate information into their own abbreviated form. If students are reading a piece of writing like this informational article, they have a purpose. They need to summarize it. They need to look for those key ideas. And then I know that they're learning when they're able to tell me what they read in their own words. You know, in addition to translating information into their own words, graphic organizers are also a way to help students organize thoughts and pieces of information for them to use later on, as we mentioned with an earlier standard. So using these summarization skills with their organizer, this piece of writing, for example, could be used during their debate project that I talked about earlier in the engagement table. The fourth standard that I used is with some guidance and support from peers and adults, develop and strengthen writing as needed by planning, revising, editing, rewriting, or trying a new approach, focusing on how well purpose and audience have been addressed. So students will be focusing on revision, editing a piece of writing. So during a research project, during writing a paper, students will peer edit their classmates' research. The drafts, looking for spelling, grammar, and relevant evidence, and any clarity. Oftentimes when I have students do peer editing, I have a very detailed worksheet that they can use that looks for whether the story is written in an organized manner, whether there's credible sources, whether they use excellent detail. I also have students rate from a 1 to 5 on the quality of writing. And if it is a lower number, I like them to offer suggestions. There's a spot to write comments on what they could do better. There's a spot for questioning. I want them to give great critiques too. If they think that the paper is very well written and give them a 5, I want them to tell them why. Students that are on IEPs can have the paper read to them orally, or perhaps they could work with an assigned aide to more closely read the document and be able to make suggestions and ask questions as they're listening to the paper being read. So I know students will understand the revision and editing process because they're going to produce a clean draft of the research paper, as well as have made a solid list of, suggestions, questions, and clarifications from that worksheet that I give them for the author of the publication. The in-depth list shows the student has used and built a knowledge base through editing. So revision is very important to building a knowledge base. So not only are students looking at grammatical and spelling errors, but they're integrating new information into what they already know. The student doing the peer editing is learning new information from the author of the paper, and the student that wrote the paper is learning new information and implementing new ideas from their classmate that edited the paper. So it's really just an excellent way for both students to practice editing skills as well as build up a more solid foundation for future learning. And the fifth and final standard I used was write narratives to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, relevant description, and well-structured event sequences. Students will write a narrative and increase their storytelling abilities. So the project is that students will write a narrative. And they can either write, draw, sing, or speak their story. In order to outline their ideas, students can build their story in smaller chunks using a graphic organizer or storyboard. This allows for better processing and differentiation for special learners that might not just be able to jump right in and write a story. In order to meet students with different learning abilities and learning skills, I want to allow students to either draw a narrative through a series of pictures, they can write the narrative, they can speak it, they could even write a song and sing the narrative if they wanted using programs such as VoiceThread. In order to know that students have developed an effective narrative, they're going to have a complete, coherent, and organized story that's either written, spoken, drawn, or sing that is well structured and descriptive. So Hattie suggests that creativity is more effective to student learning and engagement than more passive learning methods, such as videos and lectures and filling out worksheets or taking tests. This is something that I agree with, 100%. Anytime a student is actively engaged in learning, whether it's from drawing or writing or working with your classmates, when they are creating something, they're learning and they're learning it well. They're excited to be doing the project. Marzano also says that allowing students to process information in smaller amounts at a time helps them move on to the next stage of the lesson or concept a little better. And so if students are able to start their narrative through an outline, a storyboard, or a graphic organizer, they might be able to tell a better story in the long run. This method of differentiation through narrative writing also helps Native American students or even other students of different cultures and students that are more visual learners to share their ideas via pictures, songs, or words. And we read about that in the Price Callan and Love article this week, that Native Americans just have a different method of telling their stories than, we might in the classroom. Thank you.